Chair, you are now live.
Good afternoon. I'm Chair Darren Green, and I'd like to welcome you to the October 13th, 2022 Asheville Area Riverfront Redevelopment Commission meeting. The purpose of the AARRC is to recommend to the city and county an overall policy for the continued development and sustainability of the regional riverfront. The commission provides recommendations to the city and county for effective management of the public resources for the districts and actively pursues and assists private sector investments in the districts. The commission is made up of 14 members representing the city of Asheville, the Council of Independent Business Owners, Riverlink, Asheville City Council, Buncombe County Commission, and the town of Woodfin. Our committees consist of mobility and transportation connections and public safety, including river recreation and water quality. All commission members and staff are participating virtually. We appreciate your patience as we work through the committee meetings a bit differently. Pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 1666A-19.24, this will be a remote meeting which the public can access by any of the following means. We are streaming live on our virtual engagement hub, which is accessible to the virtual engagement hub link on the front page of the city website and also linked on the committee page. We also have an option for the public to listen by phone by calling 855-925-2801. The meeting code number is 9385 for callers to call in and listen. Send public comments by email to Riverfront Commission October 13 at publicinput.com. For those of you out there with us today, welcome. I'd like to call this meeting to order. It is 4:07 p.m. and I'm going to be calling roll call. When you hear your name, say present. Vice Chairman David Brown.
Present.
Christy Quinn. Ann Keller.
Present.
Joe Ransmeyer.
Present.
Tim Schaller.
Present.
Ben Williamson.
Present.
Jeremy Goldstein.
Present.
Samantha Cole.
Present.
And Jim McAllister.
Present.
Thank you all. We do have more than 7 members, so we do have a quorum to vote. Staff, was there any public comment received in advance of this meeting?
Not that I know of. Dana, was there any public comment that you saw?
No public comment in advance.
Thank you. Moving on to continuing business, I want to thank you all for participating and helping out in the Water Quality Summit, which was surprisingly only a month ago. It seems like it was 6 months ago, and I think it was a really successful event. And again, big thanks to Ann Keller for helping to put that event together, and Samantha and Kate and Joe for also contributing, and all of you for being there and supporting it. Has everyone had an opportunity to read through the Water Quality Summit report? Okay, we're going to use that and we're going to vote on that as from our minutes from the last meeting. So I'm going to go through the roll call again, and actually, excuse me, I'm going to go back. Can I get a motion to approve that document as our minutes from the last meeting?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Thank you. All right, I'll go through the roll call again. Vice Chairman, how do you vote?
Yay.
Ann Keller,
Yay.
Joe Ransmeyer,
Yay.
Tim Schaller,
Yay.
Ben Williamson,
Yay.
Jeremy Goldstein,
Aye.
Samantha Cole,
Aye.
and Jim McAllister.
Yes.
All right. Thank you all. Those minutes are approved. So let's have a discussion. 2 things that really stood out from that report were that there needs to be more emphasis on working with elected officials, both in the local, regional, and statewide, and as well as the education and marketing to the public. And I'd like to take a couple minutes, and I'm going to throw it to Ann right now to talk about speaking to and communicating some ideas and doing also some education for our elected officials and what we might want to do as a commission moving forward. Ann?
Well, I think it was pretty clear that getting people to be more aware of and knowledgeable about the river and its health is a top priority. And, you know, considering there's different ways of doing that, obviously we need more public awareness and concern because they're the ones who ask city council or county commissioner, whomever it is, to take action. But the other part of it is helping the elected officials understand the situation with education, with information, you know, building relationships. And across the region, it seems like, and by that I mean at least 6 or so counties, some of the farthest away where the small part of the river or its watershed is might not be so critical. But if we could get a number of elected officials to speak on behalf of the health of the river in the legislature, that could help a lot in various ways everybody can think of. So that's one big element that we came away with, I think. Is that what you were looking for, Darren?
Yeah, and we had had a conversation, you and I, about having them be a small team of folks that could have those one-on-one small group meetings with these elected officials.
Yeah, I think that's really important to schedule meetings, you know, not till after the elections, because people will be changing and that would be kind of a waste of time and they're not interested anyway right now. But to set up some meetings with various elected officials and go to their offices and talk to them about the situation and get a sense of where they are and see if we can move them a little bit towards a better way of dealing with this, whether that's money or new legislation or whatever that might be. So, so that we're talking about 2 or 3 people who could make those meetings and, you know, be consistently involved, who would be able to voice the results of the meeting, but also elicit some interaction and thought from the elected officials.
Thank you. So would you like those who might be interested to reach out to you directly, Ann, and you all can have a conversation about what that would entail?
Sure. Kate has already indicated interest in that. So there's 2 of us already. Another person would be nice to have to, you know, provide other approaches and input on that, who can consistently attend and be thoughtful about it. So yeah, if you're interested, let me know and let's see what we can put together.
Are you asking for others from our commission, Darren, or from the community, or what?
No, we're talking about the commission.
Yes. Okay. And
So,
you're talking about contacting our local elected officials?
no, we're talking about all over the region, state, county. I mean, yeah, state, county, local. There'd be quite a bit of work. So anyway, we'll have to see who's interested and who can make a commitment, and we would then develop a plan and go about it.
Thank you. The other big point that was discussed at the summit was education. And that could come in all kinds of forms. I've been doing a little research on what other organizations and communities have been doing to promote the water quality in their region. I've started to find some really interesting documents, 2 from the EPA, where it's almost a handbook on how to craft and basically develop a marketing plan, a social media campaign on getting the public involved and interested and focused on water quality. So I am happy to help, lead this working group on the development of some ideas and some crafting some some documents that we could share with both our city and county officials per our purview, and let's find some ways on educating the public on what we have found out, what we've learned. Again, another way to put a little more emphasis on these issues that the elected officials may not be thinking about, may not have on their radar. And if we can get the public involved in really helping to push this initiative, it'll probably have a big impact on being able to make some changes. So I am happy to open that up for discussion and invite anybody who would like to work with me on that.
Darren, I would be willing to help with that.
Okay.
Okay. I had a couple of questions. I guess maybe to Anne or anyone who might know, maybe someone from the city. Well, are the city people back on board, or are they still excluded here? Are the city people listening?
Right, they're city, yes.
Jeff's
City
here,
staff
yeah.
is with you.
Okay. Well, I know in the notes, and that there was a part where it talked about, part of the problems with stormwater was from leaking septic tanks, sewer overflows, poor agricultural practices. How much, or do we have any idea about old infrastructure in the city, like old sewer lines themselves that have been there 100 years and maybe leaking? I know there's some kind of effort to replace, but do they replace, Stephanie, you might know this, do they replace them only when there's a problem, like something bubbles to the surface, or
There's two, I will just say, like, I don't know a lot about this, so I'm kind of tentatively wading out into these waters, but I'm smiling only because Brian Schick's on this call and he knows a lot about this from a personal experience. But we do have a very large backlog for a maintenance list. It's very large, and it includes both problems that someone just calls in because something is broken or we have a sinkhole or something like that. And then it includes planned capital improvements where city staff knows that we need to make some major infrastructure changes. I am not aware, and maybe somebody else is here, but it is not within my expertise to know that we would actually have data on like we wouldn't have the entire system for the city of Asheville mapped out that says how old these structures are and where, and real data that would say it's leaking here or leaking there. And in your work with the Stormwater Task Force, would you be able to speak to that a little bit more than me?
Only a little. I think there is a mapping effort underway, but it's not all mapped. And so there's no data specifically on every single place and every single situation. There's water quality sampling going on that people can use. You can backtrack up to locations sometimes with that. But right now, I don't think it's enough. We don't have all the information about that. I think the city staff are aware of where some of the old things are. And it's a matter of not enough money and not enough people right now to address some of these things.
I can also add that whenever we have a significant capital project, we do our best to, I'll give an example. Cox Avenue is a project that we're starting the design work for next year, probably in January, February. We will actually get the entire system underneath Cox Avenue videoed. So we will go through there and we will look so that we can identify any issues, knowing that because we're doing a major streetscape project that we're going to redo the infrastructure. And before we start ripping things up, we want to know what the concerns are.
Mm-hmm.
So we do that as well.
That sounds good. The other question I had, was that, we talked about some about runoff from livestock and other animals. And then I mentioned, stream bank erosion. Are those two parts of the same thing, Ann? Is that where people have cows and they get their water from a stream, or they go up and down a bank to get to the stream? Or we must have data on where that comes into play in our watershed, or do we?
I think the impacts you're mentioning could be separate or together. They could be simultaneous or they could be separate. And I don't think there is adequate information on that. There are a lot of interesting limits on information related to the agricultural sector based on the Farm Bill. So it creates another interesting knowledge challenge.
So we'd almost have to, trace the streams and trace the tributaries to get a visual on it. Then, I mean, if there's not data there, I don't know. But there's some incentive for farmers to have an easement or conservation around the streams, is there not, to protect them?
I think there are a lot of efforts underway and lots of different sources of funding. It's a matter of who can do what, when, and how much they have to contribute for their matching and all these other sorts of things, Joe. It's not an easy answer.
Okay. I just wanted to throw that concern out there.
Yeah.
So the final, well, not the final, but one of the other big parts of the next steps on the water quality summit is to actually develop a plan, something that we can share with both the city and county officials that say, this is what we, after due diligence and research and our efforts, this is what we recommend they do. And this may not come out for a few months. We need time to talk to officials and talk to other organizations and galvanize galvanize these thoughts and make sure that they're in line with what needs to happen.
Darren, I want to just interrupt there because I don't think that we're going to come up with a plan amongst ourselves in this group. I don't think we have enough expertise or enough information. I think we have to work with city and county and state and federal agencies and organizations and nonprofits and a lot. So they need to be part of the conversation. That's my recommendation.
That's what I'm sorry if I didn't make that clear.
It's not us. We have to establish a work group, including other people who would be able to identify this. And it's a tall order. So it could take a very long time. It's hard to know, but I think we have to organize it and have it established. And these other entities have to agree to participate. There could be some reasons that they're overwhelmed and don't want to, or can't, or have something else already ongoing. And I think the first thing is to have the conversation with the appropriate different folks.
I thought I just said that, but Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what I heard Darren say was, I think these two committees, by gathering the information for the education and for what Ann and her group is going to do, will elicit more information. There's nothing like learning by teaching. So I think that we know it's going to take a while, but I think that having maybe a time frame as to when we want to get to that, or just not letting all that effort that was put out dissipate is important.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that'll be part of, I think there's a thought that needs to go into it and organize. We need to organize, and it might not be the same people that are on these two groups. I don't know. I haven't thought that through, and I don't know that you have, Darren, necessarily either gotten that far, but seems like we'd have to ask for participation from county, city, other people on this, and be aware of what they're doing. And I mean, I think it would be, what's the right word? I can't think of it right now, but wrong if we just sat down and started doing it. Even after we have these discussions, I think we have to have a group that is including representatives from these other organizations. They have to be buying in and contributing to it because they're going to have to implement it. We don't have money or people to do any watershed work. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement here, and I think I just want to go back to our mission, our goal, our purpose is to provide recommendations. So at the end of this year, we are going to want to provide a bullet point list of recommendations to both the city and the county. And I think some of what we're talking about now, and what we've discussed last month, are going to be distilled. It may not be this comprehensive plan that we hope to have at some point, but by the end of this year, we're going to have some bullet points that we're going to share with these officials. There's certain broad statements that we know that are going to be helpful in moving this forward, which education is a huge part of it. And that can come in all kinds of different forms. So, and I think working with these smaller groups, we can try to even distill these bigger, broader concepts into something more defined and share those with those other nonprofits and other folks that are already working on this work. So I think we're all saying the same thing. And again, I appreciate everybody's work and efforts in this. And for those of you who would like to work on the marketing part, please contact me, the marketing education. And if you're interested in working with Ann, I know she's looking for probably 1 or 2 more people, reach out to her. So I think it's fair to say that we can move on to the next point unless there's any more comments. All right. So we have a development impact review. It's for the Stoneyard project. It's on Lyman Extension and Lyman Street Road. And I will go ahead and pass the microphone over to the folks that are representing this development.
Thank you, Chair. I'll go ahead and get us started here. We do have folks from the development team. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Will Palmquist, Principal Planner with Planning and Urban Design. I am working on reviewing this new project in the Riverfront design area. I'll also be taking it through to Design Review Committee and eventually City Council for the Conditional Zoning. Go ahead and share my screen here. Let's see. So I'll just walk through some of the basic overview of the project and then kind of think through a little bit of the development impact framework for the Riverfront Commission as well. And then we can turn it over to the applicants who are representing the project if there are any more questions. So this project is located in the Lyman Street sector of the Riverfront design area. It's just in that corner where Lyman Street turns at the roundabout where Riverside Drive continues on. And this project and this site was actually approved for a conditional zoning a few years ago. I think they originally were proposing 133 residential units, and the project has changed hands, and basically the applicant's coming back with an amendment to that conditional zoning, and what's being proposed is a 6-story building with 263 residential units and about 4,000 to 5,000 square feet of retail space. and artist studio space too. Yes, this is the old Brickyard site. I believe those structures were structurally compromised, and they were demolished recently. And there was an old maybe ice house. I don't know if it was the Brickyard site. I'm not 100% positive.
Yeah, I think most people knew it. This is staff. Hi, everybody. It is, and I'll just remind everybody. So for the interest of the public being able to hear the questions too, just raise your hand and we'll call on you. This was called the Stone Yard. So the original development proposal on this site that was completely approved through City Council was the Stone Yard site.
Yep. And then this project is kind of renamed to Woodfield Stoneyard. As mentioned, the project requires a conditional zoning. So to the residential, I guess actually the commercial expansion district, because it has mixed use elements, but a lot of the RAD River form code applies. So that's how staff will be evaluating it when it goes to planning and zoning, and then city council eventually. And then a review next week at design review committee, and then any comments that kind of get generated today throughout the discussion will get forwarded on to that committee for their consideration. So you can kind of see the overall layout of the building, mostly a square shape with a kind of a courtyard inset in the northwest corner of the site. I don't know if you can read it on the plans, but essentially the first 2 stories is a structured parking deck with 4 stories of apartments above. On the ground floor, there is a lobby space, and I don't know if you can see my cursor. I think you can. A lobby space located on the southern side of the courtyard, and then the retail artist studios are located on the northern elevation at Lyman Street North, so to speak. Project is a bit challenging because a lot of it is in a floodplain. So a lot of the design considerations are kind of driven by that reality to some degree. Some of the parking will be available for the public and for the retail artist spaces, and then the rest will be for residents that live there. Let's see, I'm going to flip to the elevation drawings. So this first elevation is the west elevation. So this is what would be facing kind of Lyman Street on the west side. If you're looking at it kind of from the river, so to speak, you can kind of see the 2-story parking structure with some screening elements. One of the garage entrances located further south on that elevation, as well as a loading overhead door where folks can move in. It can be used for moving. It can be used for dumpster and trash collection as well. You also get a sense of some of the materials being proposed, kind of a combination of different things. So fiber cement panels, brick veneer, and then some like aluminum and metal accent components as well. Scrolling down a bit to the north elevation. So this is kind of facing the the roundabout. There's another garage entrance on that elevation as well. So there are 2 entrances, one off of each side of Lyman Street. You can see some of the stone veneer proposed in the center section of the elevation as well. And then the storefronts located here, they're noted as having floodgate channel systems, so they can mitigate any kind of flooding events. And then the artist studios are detailed in this center portion of the building. Let's see, there are some courtyard elevations. So in that corner, you kind of get a sense of how that how that would work. There's also some courtyard renderings and concepts that the applicant has provided that we can look through as well. It might be a little more illustrative. And then this is the south elevation. So again, the parking structure with the screening, 4 stories residential above. And then finally this is courtyard 2. Trying to find the east elevation. So there are different elevations for the different courtyard concepts. So I'm going to try to give you a thorough. A lot of elevations. Let's see. Samantha Cole has her hand raised.
Actually, it's Lisa Connell.
Yeah, I do. Hi.
Oh.
If you're looking for the east elevation,
Yeah.
the overall, there's 3. The first sheet has 3 overall elevations.
Okay.
And it captures, yeah, there you go.
Must have skipped over it. Thank you.
I know. Yeah, you're welcome. I think it's the one
Up here.
looking at right there.
Yep. Okay. Yep. And then this is the east elevation, kind of the back of the building, so to speak, facing the railroad tracks. So those are all the major elevations. There are additional elevations for the courtyard renderings. And then a few of those concepts, actually, let me show you some of the renderings the applicant has provided. So this is kind of the northern perspective of the artist studio spaces. And then, sorry, computer's being a bit slow. And then the view looking kind of southeast across the roundabout to both Lyman Streets. You get a kind of a sense of the scale, interaction of the courtyard and the first 2 stories of the structured parking with the building above, and then the way the different bays and massings kind of work together in that regard. A little more of a digital view, that same kind of angle. And then a view looking at it. This is the northeast perspective, looking down Lyman Street. A few of the plaza concepts that have been submitted, they all kind of have some similar elements. This one is kind of thinking about a rain garden in the center with a bioswale along the sidewalk with seating towards the building. Kind of a similar concept here. Concept number 2 with some different spatial configurations, trying to kind of tie into some of the existing materials in the built environment nearby. And then concept number 3, kind of a combined bioswale and rain garden and more of a kind of hardscape plaza for the majority of the courtyard. And then lastly, just thinking about some of the framework checklist and some of the thematic items to kind of help think through some of the impacts and benefits of the project. So thinking about water quality and stormwater, I think the project incorporates some of those aspects like the bioswale and so forth in the courtyard. I know the building is designed to be flood resistant and designed to be such. So it is a challenging site, and the project is kind of designed to mitigate the fact that it's in the floodplain and the potential impacts of that. Parking and multimodal transportation. The project does provide about 80 public spaces that'll be used for folks visiting either the retail spaces or the artist studios. The sidewalks are just proposed to remain in place. They're pretty new as part of the RAD tip project, so those existing sidewalks would remain, although the plaza area at the corner will be increased and improved as well. There's also bicycle parking located along Lyman Street and interior to the garage as well. Lisa? Or does James have his hand up? I'm not sure. I see two hands.
It's Jim McAllister's one of them, Will. Is there any information about EV charging stations in the building? How many of those they plan to have?
I didn't see anything about that. We can certainly ask the applicant.
We do. This is Lisa with Housing Studio. We do have both public and residential EV charging stations. I think we're accounting for at least 8 or 9 at this point. And then we have the capability for expansion in the future. So we've worked that.
8 or 9 for 400 residential units?
It's 263 residential.
I'm sorry. Okay. That helps a little bit, but not much.
Yeah, I think that we're continuing to look at that because I know the demand for that is growing, and I'm just right now cold. I can't remember the number on top of my what we put in there, but we do have the thought of there being a need for more. I know we're not putting in 50 EV chargers at this point, but again, we have within our design when we hit the street. We'll have the capability, the conduit in place, and the electrical load capacity for expansion in the future.
I'm aware of one large luxury apartment building in Woodfin that's having difficulty. Their tenant turnover is skyrocketing, and the manager tells us that that's one of the top reasons that kind of rents they're charging. Their tenants are demanding charging stations, and they're not able to supply them. So I'd really hope that you'd at least put the infrastructure in for 100 of them, or maybe 200, because that is our future, or it appears to be. Just my thought.
I'll chime in, but my name is Brian Schick. I'm the applicant and developer with Woodfield, and you raise a great point. This is a moving target, as you know, Mr. McAllister. So just to kind of amplify what Lisa said, we already have 8 or 10 planned for both our residents and the public. And the key that our consultants and our contractors tell us is design our panels to be expandable. So that's really the holy grail. It's far cheaper for us to design our electrical panels today for expansion for these needs, because they take about 40 or 50 amps per charger, which is a good bit of demand. So build that into the panel today. Conduit is cheap. And then as we see how it's used and where it's used, we're planning for the future. So we hear you loud and clear, and it's the right thing to do, and it's good for economics as well.
That's a great answer. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Joe, you had a question?
Yes. I know when we looked at the other design that was put forward by the other group, it was very different. But one thing we had concern about was what the pedestrians see when they're walking along the building, along the sidewalk. And I'm glad to see that there's the courtyard in that corner. I guess it would be the western, the one towards the roundabout. That little elevated courtyard is a good addition. And I guess there will be the artist studios there. Will there be any other doors or ways for pedestrians to get into the building, or not? I guess they don't have any real reason to go in unless they're going to visit someone in an apartment, or. But at least they can see there some of what's happening besides just cars behind a screen.
Brian, you're muted.
Joe, this is Brian. I'll chime in again, and Lisa can chime in as well. So, Will, if you could, let's just move this image up a little bit so folks can see. Well, let's just talk about the top image there. So this is looking from David and Patty's perspective coming down River Arts Place, where we have our garage entering from the same vantage point. Our four retail bays four bays to the right, which you see lit up and rather colorful. One to the left. The one to the left is larger. We think that has the capacity to be a food service opportunity, and we're putting a grease trap nearby for that reason. We say artist studios. We're not sure if they're all going to be filled by artists. Some sort of hard goods retailers is an option as well. And I've already had conversations with Jay Hackett at Black Wall Street, and we want them to have their entrepreneurs use at least one of those 5 bays. So we have that memorandum of understanding going. And Will mentioned that to meet the current code, essentially, we think both levels of the garage are potential for flood. Certainly the ground floor level. I don't have to tell anybody more about that than this commission. So current code requires us to have habitated areas to have flood gates, very expensive. The gates will be stored in the garage. They'll go into slots and put down when we see a major flood event like we just saw with Ian. So when we have advance notice of a big event heading our way, the leasing office and those will be closed up. But we're trying to be very intentional to your original point, Joe, about having the pedestrian realm be very engaging. Will, if you could slide up or however you see it down to show this color rendering down below. And so this was one of our first renderings we did. Very different than the last concept from the previous developer. We saw one of the main reasons that we are here for this site is the river and all of the public investment the city has made in the rad tip with the Dykeman Trail, with the protected bike lanes, with the traffic circles, the wayfinding, the responsible bioswales and engagement with the river. We want to complement that and enhance that further. So we saw this corner is critical. It's a gateway to the River Arts District. We wanted to make it open air and inviting to both the public and our residents, to not have it closed off as a space just for the residents. So it's essentially public space on private land. We had a really good session with stakeholders in the group led by the RADPAC organization, some of whom are on this call. We sat stood on site in the sun with our civil engineer and with our land and landscape planner, Seaman Whiteside, and we talked about it. So we could go back to them if you like, but a lot of the feedback we got that we're trying to fulfill is to use the existing crosswalks as a point of engagement. Understand that people are not just going to walk a 90-degree around the corner. They're going to want to cut through, and really invite them to cut through the corner to engage with it, to continue the theme of what was done with the rad tip responsibly with the bioswales and pervious pavement. So we're trying to achieve that. And then again, back to your original comment, Joe, to make it engaging to both the resident and to the public, because this is kind of a front door, if you will, to the River Arts District. If you look on this image going down Lyman towards the Swananoa, that elevation in the pedestrian realm is entrances to the garage. We're trying to avoid what some critics have called cars behind bars, and to use this as an opportunity to let it be functional, to let the water flow in and flow out, as it certainly is going to do, but use it for art opportunities. On one of the other elevations you've seen, we're considering seriously talking to the University of North Carolina, Asheville, and their students with their plasma cutting capability to create plasma cutted images in there that are both functional and attractive and will engage folks as they walk along that elevation. And then we've added these weather steel or core 10 elements to the building, which is a bit of an homage to the industrial area that the river and the railroad and this warehouse district have been long ago. And I'd be remiss, it probably won't end up looking just like this, but we have harvested many of the pallets of bricks from the old coal and ice building, and we intend to bring those back in that courtyard as an homage. Will's now zooming in on the elevation where we see the holes. That's just a first crack at what could be maybe some core 10 cutouts to let water flow in and out, but still have some visual interest to the pedestrian as they walk through along this building on Lyman. Anything else?
If I can interrupt just a second.
Sure.
Brian spoke about meeting with RAPAC and meeting with a group in front of the building with David and Patty, who were the closest neighbors. And they have, at this point, the developers have been really taking information from the local community and trying to incorporate it. So I was staying quiet in the beginning of this because I do want to have the other commissioners have their input to it. But what I will say, the neighborhood is, at this point, pretty much approving of the aesthetic of what's happening to this site.
Alrighty, there's no other questions at this time. I'm sure I'll hopefully perk some more thoughts as we move through the matrix a little bit, thinking about economics and business climate. So,
Well, looks like Ben has his hand raised.
Sorry, I actually took it just down if you're going to talk about economics. Well, I don't know if I missed it. I was just curious if there's any initial idea of affordability in terms of percentage AMI on some of these units and what the breakdown is as it stands now on residences.
Ben, I'll speak to that. This is Brian with Woodfield. As you may know, I'm not sure if you do know, but the last project to get approved had no affordability, so it was 100% market rate. We've noticed that, and then we've also heard from the neighborhood, particularly the merchants, that they appreciate the challenge of the site being in a floodplain. They appreciate the challenge of the site also being a brownfield, and we're seeking a brownfield designation from the state of North Carolina. So that does bring some challenges to the economics of the site for sure. Not to say that public parking is more important than affordable housing by any means, but we did get a lot of feedback that asking us to continue to provide the same number of public parking. And one of the bullets that Will had up addresses that, to where it parks not only our residents, which we strive for one parking space per bedroom, which is more than one per unit, of course. And we believe we're in a position to both offer those parking spaces, 80 plus public parking spaces, and we're offering, and it's in our application with the city, to offer to go from 0% affordable to 5% affordable at 80% of the area median income. And I believe that's consistent with what was approved going downriver. I think it's called 159 Riverside. Maybe Stephanie can confirm that.
already.
Steph is off the call. Ben, did you have any follow-up?
I don't. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Joe? You're muted, bud.
I'm sorry. I have a question regarding the stormwater. I know the site was originally, or the last developer told us the whole site was considered impervious because of all the traffic that had been there and various uses. And I saw that you had that small courtyard area with a bioswale, and there's something underground, some kind of catchment basin. But is there any other thought of using any green roof structures or any other creative ways to? There's going to be a lot of water fall on those buildings, and are you basically going to just send it to the river, or is it going to be try to slow some of it down with some creative methods there?
So this is Warren Sugg with Civil Design Concepts. I can answer a little bit of that, and then we can let others answer more. Yeah. So certainly heard in the group meeting from a couple of weeks ago that that sort of public-private area on the corner was a key area to not only have have interest, but also, maybe do a little bit of education as people go through there. So I think that area specifically will definitely have some stormwater function, and will do some real treatment, some real volume, but I think it's more of an educational piece. The piece that's inside the deck that is the storm tech would be the primary stormwater control for the site. That's where we're expecting, the roof, the hardscape, everything to sort of go through and certainly function through it. Recognizing that we're within floodplain, and there'll be water that will want to come both directions on that. So there's a lot of complexity that goes into that, but that's the main ways that we're doing that. And then Lisa and others can probably go a little more into detail, but we do have some of those courtyard areas that are up on higher levels where we are expecting, a fair amount of green area, that I think will certainly be nice for the residents, but it also is just, it definitely makes the whole situation a lot better. So that would be kind of how we're seeing the stormwater. And one other thing while I'm sort of on the mic, along that east-west part of Lyman, just talking about the interest and the sidewalk, we will have, Lyman, at first glance, you don't think it drops a whole lot, but there's quite a bit of slope alignment as you're going towards the river. And in doing so and having that retail artist space, we are having to kind of step those. So we do have sidewalks that are going to be splitting from one another. So you're going to have a lot of interest where you're going to pull people up onto that area where the retail artist area is, and then you'll have the more public realm where they'll be following the actual slope of Lyman. So I think that's a really neat, interesting area where people will be able to kind of make two decisions there, and then that'll tie you right into that public-private area, and then around to the main part of Lyman that's parallel on the river.
So, hey, this is Lisa. Just one more point, and I just wanted to emphasize that we are looking at green roofs on these elevated courtyard components, level 3. And I think that's going to be a beautiful and functional and important part of this overall design, so that people that are living in these elevated units have a bit of relief with some green space. Plus it serves that function of slowing water down, taking up some of that water and not having such an impact on the area around there.
That's great.
No, of course.
Well, will there be, like, I know the city put in some backflow preventers on their stormwater discharge pipes. Will you have something like that as well? Or?
That's right. In fact, I think the existing pipe that's going under Lyman now, I believe the survey says there's already a one-way valve, if you will, that helps that flood stay in the river and not come back through there. So yeah, we'll certainly have that, keep that. And if we need to do more of that to protect not only this building, but other buildings, we're certainly willing to do that. We did that down on the park at Amboy, and I was super excited a few years ago when there was a big flood how well it did. It actually didn't go into the bowl like I thought it would, so it was a huge success.
Alrighty. Any other questions at the moment? Feel free to jump in with anything. Just working down the matrix, thinking about economics and business climate. The project does add retail uses and artist studio spaces, so it will contribute to kind of enlivening the area, bringing visitors to the area, folks who don't just necessarily live here. Likewise, with the residential climate, it will have a lot of folks living here, so it'll kind of continue to help the riverfront area, the RAD, move to a 24/7 neighborhood that's always up to something. I think the 5% affordable will go a long ways to kind of helping to have a more diverse kind of residence mix than if it was just all at market rate. And then, thinking about the urban design, definitely a lot of pedestrian connectivity with the existing sidewalks and then the courtyard that will help engage people to interact with the building, as they're passing by or coming specifically to the uses in those retail artist studio spaces. I think Brian was talking, or maybe I saw it on the application, there's opportunity for public art as well in some locations. That might be a future stage that that we would work with the applicant on through the typical process. I don't think I have a lot of details on signage and lighting currently. And then landscaping and planting, some of the green roof elements, the courtyard element, and then the required street trees and the parking garage impact screening will be pretty significant as well to help soften the built environment throughout that location. Let's see. A few more points to consider here. Sorry, I don't know why it's having a hard time navigating this. So I don't believe the project has a specific green certification that it's going for. We did talk about some of the charging stations that will make it easier for residents who have electric vehicles, and the possibility to add more of those in the future. Things like healthy food, community gardens, edible plantings. I can't think of anything off the top of my head that I've seen in the project so far, except the project, will be kind of in a more mixed use area with more opportunity for, food services and restaurants and some limited grocery, but also with more residents living here, it can definitely drive the demand for perhaps a grocery store and more of those kinds of services. So it's definitely a virtuous cycle as far as amenities and food access goes with more folks living here. Equity and racial justice. I think the affordable units help go to the, making it a more equitable development, allowing folks with less than the median income to live in at least 5% of the units. I don't know if you all have interface with the Black community at all, or maybe did you mention Black Wall Street earlier, or how you're thinking of trying to involve a more diverse range of tenants, whether residential or commercial?
If you're asking, I can speak to that.
Yeah.
Also, take a step back to sustainability. We may have, shame on us, we left it out of our application. We generally build to at least a bronze, if not a silver, National Green Building Standard, which is an alternative to the USGBC. I'm a LEED accredited professional, so it's something that we do in all of our Woodfield projects. So it will be a sustainably built building. We have reached out to Black Wall Street. It was great to get to meet Jay Hackett. I wasn't aware initially when we went under contract on this site that they were in discussions with the city to take the lease directly across Lyman Street. So they're our neighbor. We're wanting their folks to be in the building, and we've had early discussions about how some of their entrepreneurs can engage as vendors or subcontractors or subcontractors as we build the project. So we're entering into those efforts. And you had one more thing. We have an ADA consultant on the building, and we always take great care to follow not only just the minimum fair housing laws, but also all the ADA requirements of the building, inside of the building and on the exterior of the building as well.
Hey, Brian, this is Ann Keller. I got distracted a minute by some construction going next door and I might have missed it, but do you know how much of the stormwater is going to be treated or slowed or, contained on site before it goes right into the river, since you're so close? That would be such an asset. As we all know, there's quite a challenge with water quality.
And we've got Warren Sugg, our civil, on on the call, and he can speak to that. We do have a BMP system underneath the garage to capture the water that hits all of our pervious surfaces.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, yeah. While you're away, yeah, we have the storm tank that's below the parking
Okay.
deck area. That would be the expectation that the building roof drains, the deck itself, everything would flow to that, and then ultimately flow to the pipe that's already under lineman and into the river. And then we do have some stormwater rain gardens and bioretention areas that are out there in that public area to help, but also just to show the public what happens with stormwater and how it can be handled.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate both of those comments.
Brian, I have a question. As far as the multimodal, you're developing, my math may be off, but close to 600 or more units between Dave Steele and Stoneyard. I'm wondering if you've had any conversations with the transportation department about adding another stop for public transportation somewhere nearby.
Yeah, so Darren, 237 units, and we're seeking 263 here. So, rough math, 500 units. And then you have this 159 Riverside downriver. And so the good news is there's people that are going to be living in the River Arts District. It was the major missing element. So I'd be more than welcoming to have those discussions. We of course have had a couple of TRC meetings and transportation was involved, but that makes all the sense in the world. We find a lot of our residents, even though we adequately park them, many of them just work from home, love the walkability. They choose an area like this because of a walk score, and it'd be great to have better, in addition to the cycling and the great walking that's been added with the Dykeman path and the sidewalks, but also the transit system to come to the area in a more extensive way.
Thanks.
Alrighty. Going through the matrix a bit more. I'm happy to have Brian take a stab at this as well regarding public safety. Trying to design for public safety. Obviously, the ADA component was mentioned earlier. That's more of like an individual safety, accessibility concern and an equity concern as well. As far as public safety, I think having more folks in the area, having a mix of uses, so it's activated at different times of the day, having visitors, having residents, having the courtyard. I think the design itself being a very active place where folks are going to want to go, whether to visit or live, and a decent number of units will kind of naturally kind of make the area safer, make the experience a pleasant one, more lighting, more activity. I don't know if there's anything you all want to add to that, but that's kind of my take on it.
No, I'd say, Will, those are two key things that, we're going to have, plannings with lighting. Obviously the building will have a key card access for the safety of our residents, but the combination of the lighting and then just infusing these people that actually live, don't just come to the River Arts and leave, but live and are on the streets in the evening. It's just more eyeballs and more sense of community and more sense of neighbors looking out for their neighbors. So I think you've hit on two key points about.
Let's see. The Wilma Dykeman plan and thinking about how the project aligns with the vision for a connected regional riverfront with a balance of offerings. I think the project does that as well, and the fact that it's mixed use with commercial, artist space, and residential, and that it's located right on the river, and it'll bring people to the river, living or visiting to help experience it more. I haven't done a thorough analysis of the comprehensive plan, Living Asheville's alignment with the project. But my initial take is that, the project does does meet many of the visions and goals of the Living Asheville plan, having folks live in a growth area, mix of uses, something that's kind of in harmony with the built environment with some equity components. So my initial take is that it does check a lot of those boxes and is appropriate for where it's being proposed. Joe, you have your hand up.
Yes, this is probably for Brian, but do you have thoughts about is there going to be someone on duty 24 hours a day, like watching security cameras? I mean, I know, for instance, Jeremy, when his building was under construction, had someone trying to sleep in one of the elevators and things like that. But I don't know how far you are with that kind of thinking or what.
We do have cameras throughout the building for sure. It's not as if we have a control room with folks staffing it. We generally in all of our buildings also offer a free unit for a member of the local police department. And in exchange for that, they kind of do regular walks. They're kind of a resource officer available 24/7 in exchange for that free apartment. So we'll be extending that offer to the local lieutenant for this region in Asheville as well. So that's certain things that we do. And but you can never underestimate the ability of our neighbors to be making calls to our management staff. And it's very common for our management staff to live on site as well. So a lot of eyeballs and a lot of concerned citizens. And we're very aware of, a lot of the folks who, on this site, we inherited initially a lot of folks who were camping on the site. And, our heart goes out to them. And I know Asheville's struggling for, to serve them. And, but when it crosses over to violence, and there have been some occasions of that, I understand, in this area, then that is a concern for the greater public. So we're aware of it. We're trying to be compassionate, but attentive and focus as best we can on public safety.
Alrighty, a couple more points here. This is maybe this item maybe is a little more aimed towards commission members, asking if commission members have sought a diverse perspective on the project, and has the public commented on specific items through the public meeting. So I know you all held a neighborhood meeting. The developers have held a neighborhood meeting for the project. I haven't seen a lot of public comment for this item yet. I'm sure there will be some. I know there weren't any for this meeting. I don't know if anyone from the commission or development team wants to speak with some of those and any engagement that's been going on. I know it was briefly mentioned earlier.
Tim may want to chime in, but and I feel like I'm doing all the talking, and I apologize, but we did have our requisite neighbor meeting. But as you know, we don't touch a lot of single family. So Patty Torno is our neighbor. Now David Brown's our neighbor, but Patty's like our real neighbor. But we had our requisite neighborhood meeting. We've had at least 2, if not 3, Tim, RADPAC meetings.
So I am a little slow. I just got back from Portugal yesterday, so I'm in a different time zone. So sorry not to jump in. Like I said, we have met. We met on site. We have RADBA, our local business association. We have a little offshoot that we look at all projects, and Brian has brought that to us, and then we asked him to have a second meeting about how the project relates to RADTIP, relates to the river, relates to the neighborhood, and I do think he's done a good job with that. And meeting with Jay at Black Wall Street is important for our neighborhood. So at this point, Brian's been a good neighbor. He's had to learn some Asheville's idiosyncrasies on the other project. So at this point, I think you can check the box of meeting with the neighbors on as far as RADBA's concerned.
Great. And the last item here is just thinking about the potential other negative impacts like noise or odors. Probably not too much odor, I would imagine. And as far as noise, I mean, it does have the potential to generate some noise, just given the activity. It's obviously not a music venue or bar or restaurant, although maybe it could be a restaurant in the future. But as mentioned before, given that it's not right adjacent to other residential necessarily, that's probably mitigated. Those concerns are probably mitigated a little bit. And this is a place where people expect some level of noise and activity, and they hope for it. So as long as it stays reasonable, then it'll probably be okay. I think we've worked through the matrix pretty well, and then we have time for any last comments and questions. I think Anne has her hand up.
Yeah, Will, I just wanted to, maybe it was presented earlier and I didn't see it or hear it, but I wonder are these 1 or 2 bedroom apartments? Do we have an idea about that, Brian or Will?
Lisa, you can probably call up the unit mix, but we'll have studio and 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and a handful of 3 bedrooms, Anne.
Okay, thank you. Gee, sounds like a nice place to live, Brian.
We can get your early application in if you like. So.
Okay, thanks.
Alrighty, well, if there's nothing else, folks, if they want to provide any comments in the meantime that maybe got missed, to provide for to the DRC meeting next week, they can email it to me or email it to the DRC's public input email, which is listed on their website as well. And appreciate everyone's time to consider the project, and I will turn it back over to the chair.
Thanks, Will. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Lisa. Thank you, Warren. Like Ann said, it looks like a wonderful project. So we're all excited. Moving on to our consideration to either continue our meetings remotely or to vote to meet in person.
I think Will needs to not. Hey, Will needs to not share his screen now.
Oh, Will, can you unshare?
Yes.
Thanks.
There you go.
Thank you. Dana, I'm giving you the microphone.
All right.
For you to
Sorry
explain this. Thank you.
Sorry about the lighting here. Thank you, Chair. Dana Frankel stepping in for Steph temporarily. Our city clerk's office is asking boards and commissions to consider whether they would like to continue meeting virtually or go back to in-person meetings, which would be the default unless you all would like to continue meeting virtually. So the idea is that you will set that meeting location, whether virtual or in person, for the next year. There can be special meetings that can be different than what you've set, but those have to be noticed a week in advance. And there are some limitations currently to in-person meetings in terms of those will not be able to be streamed. And so just want you all to be aware of that. And the location that we have at this point for those is the first floor of City Hall. And I think those are that's the basic gist. I think it's appropriate for you all to discuss this, and to vote, we will need a 2/3 majority to consider that vote if you all do want to continue meeting virtually.
And Dana, I'm not sure, Darren, do we have enough
Yes.
commission members to make that vote?
We have 9. We have
Okay.
9 members
Good.
present. We have
Okay.
14 total.
Okay.
Jim, you had a comment question?
I have 2 questions. 1, what would prevent it from being able to be streamed? And 2, can you confirm where, once we choose, let's say we choose in person, we can't 3 months down the road have a virtual meeting for a reason? Does the law not provide for that, even if we notice it?
You would be able to hold A special meeting, if it's noticed at least a week in advance.
A
or
special meeting, not a regular meeting.
If you noticed it well enough in advance, I think that you would be able to change the location. I'll have to go back to the language,
Okay.
but that's my understanding. You just have to plan for that in advance. So there's a default so that the public knows how and where you're meeting.
And what's preventing the live streaming from any location?
Well, the way we run it now, the Google Meet is linked on the back end with YouTube and also this public input platform that we use. When we're in person, we just don't have those same tools, and city staff is looking into what's possible in the future. It would be ideal if we could do that. Also, if hybrid meetings were an option, but they're just not right now.
So you mean Woodfin is doing something that the city can't? That's interesting. Thank you.
Dana, as I understand it, we need to vote to either be in person or online, and an exception could be approved for a particular meeting. But if we had an exception, if we decided to go in person, I don't know exactly why or how we would decide then to go for one meeting online. To me, the question is, are we in safe enough circumstances now with COVID to have in person and plan that for the whole year? And I don't see how you jump back into a virtual unless there's some kind of, the thing that created this virtual situation anyway was state, I think, requirements for a while, and those are gone now. So we have a choice, as I see it, to choose to be in person or online. I think if you're in person, if you're online, you can have an occasional in person, but can you do it the other way? I don't know, Dana.
Let me look back at the language and just see if that's specified.
The way I understood it was that the default is going to be in person. And if you want to continue meeting virtually, then we have to have a vote for that.
No.
Right, Joe. What I was saying is, if you go one way or the other, if you go virtual, you could have a special meeting in person. But if you go the other way, I didn't know if that had been set up. And a lot of this is technology and staff limitations and meeting space, the challenges of how to do that, to get everything available to the public so that people can see and hear what we're actually discussing.
The special meeting exception can go either way.
Okay.
Right.
Jeremy? You're mute.
Do we need 2/3? Do we need 2/3 of the full commission or 2/3 of the people here?
Full commission.
2/3 of the members. So it's 2/3 of the membership.
So if there's 14,
That means all of us have to agree, Jeremy.
if there's
to change
14 members divided by 3 times 2,
It's 9.3.
9.33.
And I'm
Yeah.
I'm larger, so I get the 1 point.
So does 9 meet the test? Is the question.
Stephanie said that 9 would be enough, but we would all obviously have to agree.
But she's not a math major. I think it's actually 10, but
But then we don't have enough, do we?
I know, but I'll go.
I
with
don't
the
think
I'll go with
it's
the 9.
enough. If it's over the minimum, it's not more than 9. You don't have a third of a person.
Right. 9 is fine with me either way. But.
Anyway, if you need a vote, I've got 6 more minutes, and I have
So can we do a straw poll and see if we have anybody who is against if we don't have everybody, we can't vote on it today.
Raise your hand
Anyway.
Raise your hand for in person. How do you vote, Samantha? Ben?
I'm fine with either.
Ben?
His hand is raised. I'm the outlier. I would rather do it virtually because I think we're going to end up with more COVID challenges.
And I know we'll end up switching back if we have to, but I think we have to kick this to next meeting because it's not.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll have to continue.
Right.
Let's go. The next point is probably another thing we're going to have to punt till next meeting, which is the elections. This will be the end of my 3rd year as chair, the end of David Brown's 3rd year as vice chair.
Three more years.
So
we'll do a coup.
gotta have that discussion. Anybody want to speak up? Oh, Ann turned her camera off. That's very telling.
So what are you saying? We need to have nominations for
At
chair
some
and vice
point, we're
chair?
going to have nominations for
Okay.
a chair and a vice chair.
And we have to vote either next month or the month after?
Correct.
Well, the new term starts in January, so yeah, we're going to want to have somebody newly appointed in the chair and vice chair position.
Are you willing to serve for another term?
Well, I think that my 6-year term is actually up at the end of this year. So
I
That's
don't
what you
know
call saved by the bell, Darren.
I thought we could do.
I'll be happy to sit on a committee.
I thought you could do a second term, but I don't know. I don't have the writing in front of me. Does Dana?
That's-
Dana
That's
still-
2 3-year terms, Joe. 2 3-year terms.
Well, he's only done one, hasn't he?
No,
You've done two?
2006. I believe 2016 was my first year.
I think it'd be good for next meeting to see who is off after this and where we are with everybody. You know, 'cause
Yeah,
Joe was here. Yep, Joe was here when I got here.
Yeah. There's several of us who probably are
Right.
need to
So-
be reviewed. So I have sent an email to Steph to see if she has a running list of when folks started their terms and, you know.
Can we put these two things at the beginning of the agenda next time, because they are both things that are important to get to next year?
Yes. Yeah.
And that way we can sign out now and I can go back to sleep.
No, you can't. You're supposed to wait until like, I don't know, 8, 9.
I'm doing that.
So, all right. Well, that's the end of our meeting. Dana, did we get any public comment during this meeting?
We did not.
I make a motion to adjourn.
All right.
Second.
Jeremy, you're up.
James beat me.
Second.
And Jeremy for chair. Okay, no, I'm out.
All right. Meeting's adjourned, 5:28. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.